Hello and welcome to this week's EZIRA Hangout number 20 with your host Harrison McLean, where we talk all about the EZIRA project and what we've been up to this week to bring you the best distributed social media and business platform that you have ever seen. So, before we get started, what is EZIRA? EZIRA is a protocol for blockchain social media with a decentralized exchange and a peer-to-peer marketplace. Users can make posts on boards, groups, or profiles and encrypt them to make them private. Businesses can create crypto assets to represent voting power and distribute revenue. Merchants can list products for sale and receive free and virtually instant payments from customers. Users earn rewards when they post valuable content, earn tips, and can charge micropayments to access premium content. Supernodes earn rewards for providing file storage through IPFS. The EZIRA protocol earns revenue by selling account membership, post promotion, and charging some trading fees. Every EZIRA interface can choose which content to display and how to sort it. The protocol itself has no censorship. Users can choose which identity to use for posting, whether it's their full profile account, their persona account, or posting anonymously. EZIRA users and applications that create accounts for new users earn an ongoing share of the revenue from those users. So this week we have a few updates that we're going to be talking about. So this week in the project updates we have some EZIRA white paper improvements. So moving on from what was discussed last week, several new features are being added to the EZIRA white paper to improve the value proposition of governance addresses to the network, in addition to private assets and business accounts with multiple crypto equity classes. This will allow users to have an improved content experience by optionally utilizing content curation services and allow businesses to have more freedom in denominating their voting structures. So what that means is we're going to be fleshing out the concept of what governance addresses do by talking about specifically what their role is in the ecosystem and what they are required or basically needed to do in order to earn their share of 15% of the revenue of each of the user that subscribes to their governance address. We'll be talking about what governance addresses are required to do for the ecosystem, and we'll be talking a little bit about how businesses on the EZIRA blockchain will be able to create multiple classes of crypto equity so that some of them can have more voting rights than others, and some of them can have more revenue sharing rights than others, so that it can mirror something like a Class A, Class B share structure as what you would see in a fiat currency company trading on a stock exchange. Next up we have the EZIRA survey. So the EZIRA survey is now complete. Thank you to all of those who responded. The results will be discussed shortly after these updates. Over 100 participants have helped to direct the future of the project. So thank you to everyone who participated in the survey. And we'll be moving along to the next one, which is the preliminary ICO. So there are only 2 weekly auctions remaining before the completion of the EZIRA preliminary ICO. And the weekly auction this week will not have any minimum price, and all 10,000 EZIRA will be distributed to bidders. After the preliminary ICO is finished on the 1st of September, no more EZIRA will be distributed to the market until the main ICO. The date of commencement of the main ICO will be announced to coincide with the Pioneer release. So, moving on from the project updates, the first thing I'd like to do is go over some of the results from the survey, and we'll see what the EZIRA community has responded to this survey that asked you guys how you would prioritize some of the different aspects of the EZIRA project. So we'll go over some of the details there. So there have been 128 responses to the EZIRA survey, and we'll go through and take a look at some of the results. So for those of you who are on the YouTube, you'll be able to see the results of the survey. So here we are. First question is, what country are you from? We're seeing a lot of Venezuelan responses, some from Norway, quite a few Venezuela, some Indonesia, Nigeria, Ghana, United States of America. Many Venezuelans. Shout out to all the Venezuelans listening. Some people from Mexico, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, India, and many countries around the world represented in the EZIRA community. Next question, which gender are you? Turns out the respondents were 68% male and 30% female. So that's very helpful to us at the EZIRA team to know how to position ourselves in terms of marketing. Then next question is, to what extent do you use cryptocurrency? It's a dead even split between I use cryptocurrency every day and I use cryptocurrency more than once per week. So that's right on the money where we need to be. Cryptocurrency usage is red hot in the EZIRA community. And next up we have the ratings for the importance of users being rewarded for content. Looks like 46%, whopping 46% voted 10 for this, with an average rating of 7.5. And better privacy and control over user profile information is 34% responded 10 with an average of 7.4, so also very high. Then, as we sort of suspected, the enthusiasm for an ad-free premium membership option, which is an inherent part of the EZIRA project, is not quite as popular as some of the other things, but it still clocks out at 6.1 on average. And content sorting customization options, not quite as important as some other things, but we're seeing a mostly response in the vicinity, seeing most of our responses in the vicinity of 8, and a massive resounding yes to a simple and friendly user interface with 7.5, and massive support for censorship resistance and freedom of speech with 32% voting for 10. And here we see it located in a bit of a more comparative sense, and as you might have suspected, users being rewarded for creating content tops out at the most important improvement in a new social media platform, closely followed by better privacy controls and censorship resistance. Then we have 48% who would be interested in getting an EZIRA monthly subscription if there was a lot of great content, and 35% who would prefer to see ads. So that's a very good distribution. Then we have some 43% who have not yet promoted a post on social media before but might consider it. So that's a great market that EZIRA breaks into there, allowing anyone to promote their posts without any sort of financial friction to that process. And as we might suspect, would you post more content on social media if you earn cryptocurrency rewards for it? And that's a 50%, 57% for yes, a lot more. Then we have well over 60% of people who would be committed to spending some of their cryptocurrency rewards on products on the EZIRA marketplace. So would you purchase high quality products with cryptocurrency if you earned it from posting content? That's a resounding yes for those two answers there. And then we see all of the bitshares addresses that you guys sent, and you will all be receiving 10 EZIRA. So the survey is now closed. Last week there was a winner of 50 EZIRA, Mariana, if I recall correctly. No, Historia Fitness rather. 150 EZIRA. So there will be 10 EZIRA to each and every one of the respondents with a unique bitshares address that is not a duplicate. So we'll be sorting that out so that each person gets a fair share of 10 EZIRA each. So thank you to everybody for participating in the EZIRA survey. And next up we'll be having the development updates. So I'll be reading the development updates that have come from the EZIRA lead developer, and that's Nick. So for the development updates this week, we have the testnet status. We have been working on launching the EZIRA testnet, which comprises of multiple dependencies made up of many interconnected servers, programs, libraries, and applications. We've been working on replacing the main Steam vests and Steam $$ assets with test EZC, test EZIRA score or EZ score to replace vests, and test EZUSD across the entire architecture, so replacing those asset symbols and those variables across the Steam codebase. And we have also added an additional asset for test EZIRA. So these are obviously not final ticker values and will change with the Pioneer release, but those assets are being added to the Steam base chain, and that will form the foundation of the EZIRA Pioneer release or testnet. Next up we have the application status, which is running at alpha.ezira.io at the moment, and we have been working on the EZIRA authentication server and interface. We've been testing at auth.ezira.io, which is 90% ready. We've also been modifying the Steemit sign-up dependency to work with our testnet, and that is about 40% complete. We've also completed modifications to Steam.js, Steam RPC Auth, steamd.js, and Steam Crypto.js for compatibility of operation with the testnet. So those are software libraries that enable the interactivity between the blockchain and the web app interface. And the testnet is currently live and accessible at the following seed nodes: peer and peer 1.ezira.io, port is 2001, and you can do a health check by going to peer.ezira.io, port 8090/health. And for those on YouTube, you can see the URL on the screen there. So the testnet is currently producing blocks on a few nodes that have been run on the EZIRA main servers, and that will be the process of operation for the testnet. When we have the application reading from the testnet live, you'll be able to create your own account on the testnet, and you'll be able to create new posts and do transactions for test EZIRA and other coins. So thank you to Nick for the development updates, and we will move right along. So next up we have the Hangout thread review. So let's go over to the Hangout thread, which is always at steemit.com, and you can follow the blog HasMcLean, or my blog, which is Harrison McLean, or at Dahaz159. You can follow that to keep up with all of the blogs that we do. So each week there's a thread on Steam that announces this Hangout, and if you post your bitshares name there, you have the potential, the very strong potential to win 50 EZIRA and 50 bitshares. So this thread is the flagship of the EZIRA Hangout, and it explains everything that you need to know to start your involvement with the EZIRA project. It has last week's Hangout live stream. If you don't catch it on YouTube, it will be on Steam, and it is currently very close to the top of trending on Steam, so you can't miss it. So every week we have the top comment, where people who upvote this comment are in fact able to win 50 bitshares and 50 EZIRA. So we'll see how many bitshares entries we have this week. We've got We've got 15 on the comment. We'll call that 16. Please put it on the comment for visibility, but we'll call that 16. There's one there. See if there's any more. No, okay, we'll call it 16 addresses. One is technically not on the comment, but we'll draw from 16. Using random.org. A random number from 1 to 16, and we will choose the 5th number, so 1. We have number 1 is 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5th number is number 3. Comment number 3 is our winner. We have Jengli14. Jengli14, let's see if she upvoted the comment. There she is, Jengli, with the upvote. Jengli14 is our winner this week of 50 bitshares and 50 EZIRA. Congratulations to Jengli. And there's 50 bitshares and 50 EZIRA. $50 and 50 EZIRA to Jengli14. Congratulations. And next up we have our first overview of the Beyond Bitcoin CAS team. They've sent a report for the EZIRA Hangout, so we'll be going through that to see what the Beyond Bitcoin CAS team has been up to this week in their promotion efforts of EZIRA in Spanish. So thank you to Chucky Fucky and Brian Gav for their work with the Beyond Bitcoin CAS team in their promotion of EZIRA. So they've been putting out some great content on Twitter and beyond, especially on Instagram as well. Some really cool graphics have been coming out, especially based on the EZIRA Hangout, which for those of you who were in the EZIRA Hangout just the other day for Beyond Bitcoin CAS, I was there to answer some questions for the Spanish community, and we have the one and only Danvel with us today to potentially answer any Spanish questions that anyone may have. And then we have the YouTube recording of the EZIRA Hangout brought to you by the Beyond Bitcoin CAS team. So thank you to everybody there. Next up this week we have the EZIRA discussion topics. But first we'll go back to the Hangout thread and see if there were any topics discussed there. So after all of the bitshares addresses, we have the question from Alcidesp, and they ask, the project looks interesting, but are they promoting an ICO or an airdrop? So what the EZIRA project is using is a combination of an ICO and a share drop, not an airdrop. So an airdrop is when there are free tokens dished out based on some sort of drop list from a social media website like a Telegram group. A share drop is an allocation to the existing holders of an asset. And we have a great answer here from Lopu, lead developer. who has said that the ICO EZIRA asset is replaced with one EZIRA on the EZIRA mainnet, which is exactly right. Next up we have Cinnamon Sunset with interesting for sure, but how will it become something people will go to rather than coming to Steam it? It seems like a good idea, but I think Steam it is where it's at. Just my opinion. But hey, whatever can reward people will always be attractive, I suppose, so maybe it's a good idea. And again we have Lopu with the great answer here. We'll operate using varying parameters and some new parameters, so we'll offer a different experience to Steam it. And I'd like to add on that by saying that in addition to fundamentally changing some of the ways that the social media reward algorithm works by bringing it back to a non-linear reward curve, EZIRA will also include a decentralized exchange with user-issued assets, and it will include a peer-to-peer marketplace. In addition to that, it'll also include private messaging. So you'll be able to send private messages between user accounts, and they will be encrypted and end-to-end. So there will be many more features on the EZIRA blockchain rather than the Steam it experience. So I hope that answers your question there. Then we have a few more comments. Peer-to-peer marketplace is a good option for people looking to create buy and sell transactions without anyone in between. So fees are there, but they are much lower. Thank you for this update. Then we have a few more here. Some interesting GIFs. And we have Wissy Fenmu, who asks, can I get the link to join please? So you can learn more at ezira.io. And you can check out the alpha there as well. So all of those links, oh, and we're missing a T, that's great. There's the correct, oh, there's the T. And now the link works, there we go. Yep, so all those links are in fact included in the Hangout thread. Literally first link is ezira.io. It's right there. So, having said that, we'll go back to the EZIRA Discord for some discussion questions. Okay, so does anyone have any questions that they'd like to bring up about the EZIRA project and the updates that we've had this week? So if there's no more questions, is that a question, Ian? So can you talk about the current price a little? So the current price of the EZIRA asset is trading at around about, let's take a look. So the current price is hovering between 15 and 25 cents, currently about 14 cents rather. So there is a bit of a spread in the bitUSD pair. So at the moment there is a buy order for 14 cents and the lowest sell order is 24.8 cents. So the market is not quite liquid, but the liquidity below 50 cents is well under 300 bitUSD. So it's a few sell orders below 75 cents, which is the main selling price, and then there are quite a few orders buying it up around the 11 to 14 cent mark. So current trading price is swinging between 14 cents and 24 cents. What that means is that the market is not yet extended in supply. So there is currently an oversupply which is not bringing it into line with its 75 cent price. But that is okay because the preliminary ICO will be stopping the incoming supply of new EZIRA. So the price will have some time to recover then. As new interest in the project comes into line over the next couple of weeks and months, without the introduction of new EZIRA to the supply, we should see a lot of these orders be chewed up over the coming weeks, I would say. So there's a bit of liquidity below 75 cents, but the main order is at 75 cents. And the auctions are only distributing about 10,000 EZIRA per week, and they have been trading around about a price of about 10 to 15 cents. So if you would like to get some EZIRA below the market price, you can create a bid to the EZIRA Weekly Auction and get your piece of a small amount of EZIRA. But for large orders, the buy book does go all the way up to 75 cents. So the current price obviously might look a little bit low in your balances, but the second anyone buys even a couple of hundred worth off of the book, the price goes back to about 50-60 cents. The reason why that hasn't been the case is because it's been sold at auction for around about 10 to 15 cents, but that'll be stopping in 2 weeks. So if you'd like to get in now, then you can create a bid to the EZIRA Weekly Auction by sending bitshares or bitUSD to EZIRA on bitshares. So it is up to everyone to make that price increase by making a bid to the EZIRA auction. The more bids, the higher the price goes. It's very, very simple. And the lower the bids, the better deal you get. So in order for the mainnet release to occur, all of that will be transferred onto the mainnet. And for the main ICO, the price will again be allocated using a daily auction system, and there will not be a large single sell order in the daily auction. It'll be an amount allocated each day, so there won't be a supply glut.
We have a question in Spanish.
Yeah, go ahead, Danville.
Okay, Antonio asks, what happened with token EZIRA after the 1st of September? Is going to be changed for EZIRA coin or EZIRA dollar? Or he already hear about those, and he's not quite sure about what those means. What's going to happen after the 1st?
Okay, so on the 1st of September, absolutely nothing at all will be happening to the EZIRA asset on bitshares. What will be happening is the supply introduction of new EZIRA to the market will be stopping. There will be no more weekly auctions, and the order at 75 cents will be removed. We will be ceasing fundraising at that point in time, and we will be focusing exclusively on developing the Pioneer release or the testnet. So that will be what's happening with that. And then upon the mainnet release, all existing holders of the EZIRA asset will be share dropped into the EZIRA mainnet chain, which they will be able to claim using their bitshares account and their Steam account. So we will be operating along a similar model to the whale shares account distribution, whereby you are able to create an account using a bitshares or Steam blockchain transaction. Whale shares uses bitshares, but EZIRA will also be utilizing the Steam blockchain. You'll essentially get a memo that you can send with a minimal amount of EZIRA or Steam to the EZIRA account, and we will automate the creation of an account that claims your share drop balance from the sending account. So we'll be utilizing the same procedure as whale shares in order to create new accounts, but we'll be adding in, of course, the addition of Steam-based account creation. So every holder of Steam power will be getting a share drop of EZIRA, and every holder of the EZIRA asset will also be getting a much larger share drop of EZIRA, equal to the amount of EZIRA that they hold, plus a small percentage of the amount of bitshares they hold, which also receives a share drop. The other 4 assets will be share dropped in a little bit differently. We have still yet to determine exactly how we will be share dropping in Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, in addition to Ethereum and EOS. We will be utilizing some sort of transaction signing to prove ownership of the address, and then we'll be transferring those balances across. I think that's an extension of the Spanish question.
And he has another question. EZIRA is going to be another exchange besides BitShare?
Yes, that's correct.
And if it does, which one is going to be the first one besides BitShare?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean there. So, what EZIRA is going to be is essentially one blockchain that combines the functionality of Steam, so you'll be able to make posts, and then on another page you'll be able to make user-issued assets and trade those assets on a DEX.
He means the token is going to be in another exchange besides BitShares. I mean, if you can trade with, I don't know, I can't recall any exchange now, but
so one of the major factors that can we get the reverb off there? I think your mic is recording a bit. Okay, thank you. So one of the major factors that helps the EZIRA project to have liquidity on its asset is the fact that we'll be having an exchange built in to the EZIRA blockchain. So we won't need to do too much listing it on other exchanges. We'll have it on bitshares, obviously. But what we'll be able to do is have people deposit their cryptocurrencies into the EZIRA blockchain to purchase EZIRA, rather than purchase it from a centralized exchange. What the centralized exchanges do is they hold on to deposits of it and then redeem withdrawals. EZIRA will be doing the exact opposite. You will be purchasing EZIRA from depositing other cryptocurrencies onto the EZIRA blockchain, in a similar way to purchasing BitShares with a deposit of Bitcoin via OpenLedger. At the start, we'll be facilitating the deposits of those cryptocurrencies, but there will be an open marketplace of competition for competing gateway assets. We will be creating the first gateway asset, but there will be many others to follow after that. To directly answer the previous question, EZIRA Coin is a completely separate asset. EZIRA Coin is created in the new EZIRA blockchain to the amount of 1 per block, which is about once every 3 seconds. So there will be 10 million EZIRA created per year, and they'll be distributed between content creators, witnesses, holders of EZIRA, and many, many others. EZIRA Dollar, that is again something different. EZIRA Dollar is a smart coin that will be collateralized with the EZIRA Coin asset, so you'll be able to earn EZIRA Coin, then collateralize EZIRA Coin to borrow into existence EZIRA Dollars, which will be pegged to the price of US dollars using witness price feeds, like a market pegged asset. So it'll be similar to the bitUSD asset, but it will be collateralized by EZIRA Coin instead of BitShares. Was there a second Spanish question? I think we have.
There's one in English.
Yep, I can see that one.
Yes, for you.
I can see that one. There's two. So, question: what is the projected price of EZIRA? There is no such thing as a projected price of EZIRA. The price of EZIRA will be whatever the market deems its value is. And if anyone tells you they have a projected price of EZIRA, have a lot of questions about that person's integrity and intent. So don't listen to anyone trying to project the price of EZIRA. Look into the fundamentals and realize the value proposition that EZIRA has by being the first decentralized social media network that has a membership promoted post exchange fee stream of revenue coming into the holders of its asset. Realize that it has on-chain buy and burn mechanisms for the EZIRA Coin asset, and that 20% of EZIRA Coin is divided between all EZIRA holders when they're active. So do the do the maths in your head and work out how much money is spent on promoted posts on social media networks, how much money is spent subscribing to premium content services like YouTube Red or Spotify or Netflix, and consider the fact that 70 or so % of the network revenue from memberships will be going to buy and burn the EZIRA coin asset. Some of it's distributed out to other network factors, but about 70% of the revenue is provided through a buy and burn mechanism to the holders of EZIRA coin. So a number price on EZIRA should never ever be believed for 1 second. Don't try and project the price, just look into the value, think about what that's going to offer people, and the price is not something that's important to me right now. What is important to me is the technology, the community, and the fact that we're going to be building something that is going to make significant improvements on what has come before. Next question, I think, was the EZIRA buy order is very low and unprofitable for traders. What do you intend to do about it? I intend to let the market find the price of EZIRA, and if people would like to bid in the auction, then that's up to them. It is not intended to be a get-rich-quick mechanism for people to make auction bids and then instantly flip that for a profit. If you're looking to make a quick profit on EZIRA, I'd recommend that you look to somewhere else like a Binance Pump channel, where that sort of thing is more likely to be giving you quick returns, but with the equal opportunity of very, very quick and total losses. So EZIRA is not about buying and instantly trading it for a profit. That is not sustainable. What it is about is creating genuine value, genuine revenue, genuine use cases, and giving everybody the ability to share information and value freely without censorship. That is what EZIRA is about. So I'm not going to be physically doing anything about there not being any buy orders that are satisfactory to traders. What I will do is build EZIRA into the best social media platform the world has ever seen. That's what I intend to do about it. The other question was, EZIRA, EZIRA coin, and EZIRA dollar are the three going to be listed in different exchanges? So the answer is we're not sure yet. It'll depend on the amount of trading volume that we're able to get on the EZIRA native exchange. We'll be focusing on increasing the trading volume of the EZIRA decentralized exchange before we worry about listing it on centralized exchanges, because it's my view that that is a vastly superior model to achieving liquidity of the EZIRA asset than paying 300 bitcoins to CZ of Binance, where he is going to be pumping a lot of fake trading volume. I'm sure it'll make the volume numbers look really good, but those people won't necessarily be interested in using EZIRA for what it's intended. So we'll be focusing on the DEX first, before we get EZIRA listed on centralized exchanges. Next question, where do I send bitshares for the bidding stuff? You can create a bid to the EZIRA Weekly Auction by sending bitshares to the EZIRA address. So that's EZIRA. We have Iron Monkey with, can EZIRA be included with Masdax.io? Absolutely. We'll be working with Fuzzy and the Whale Shares team to have EZIRA included in Masdax.io. That is a fantastic idea that I support fully. What's the minimum, Blue-Hearted? The EZIRA is different from every other ICO that you've ever been in. There is no minimum price for this offering because EZIRA is designed to enable everyone, regardless of whether you have $1 or $1 million, to be able to participate. So there is no minimum bid. But the more you bid, the more EZIRA you get. Danville, that one's in Spanish. Do you know that one? Oh, hang on. No, that's... Is that,
I'm just translating.
Yep, okay. Okay, so that's some great questions. What we might do is move on to the EZIRA discussion topics, and then we'll come back to some of the other questions. So this week's EZIRA discussion topics, and feel free to come in with relevant questions as I'm talking. So this week in the EZIRA discussion topics, we'll be discussing the governance addresses. So on EZIRA, every persona and profile account will be able to specify up to 5 governance addresses. So what that means is that each account nominates up to 5 diamond members. So a governance address must be a diamond member. You nominate up to 5 governance addresses, and each one of them receives a share in 15% of the network revenue that account contributes. So what that allows is for those governance addresses is to provide you with services related to content curation, related to trust, circles of trust, notification systems, and quite a few other features to sort of act like an opinion guide about some of the things on EZIRA. So a lot of their features are mostly based at the interface level, but they are an important part of what allows content to be of a high standard. So governance addresses will be able to apply tags to posts so that filtering rules can be applied to them as chosen by users. So they're essentially the moderators that you choose. Instead of on Facebook and Twitter, posts are shadow banned because they disagree with the politics of the prevailing zeitgeist in Silicon Valley. It is up to every EZIRA user to choose their own governance address, or importantly, choose none at all. Choose none at all is definitely an option. If you do not want to be using any governance addresses, then you will not have access to their curation efforts, and you will instead see all of the content that is available to you. So we'll talk about some of the things that governance addresses do.
Okay, there is another question in Spanish, Harrison.
Yeah.
Antonio asks,
Yeah, go ahead.
EZIRA is going to have an exchange or provide that service, right? And if it does, it's going to have Bitcoin or Steam listed?
Absolutely. Bitcoin and Steam are going to be included in the initial gateway assets that will be operating on the EZIRA decentralized exchange. So Bitcoin and Steam will absolutely be available for trading. What we'll also do that bitshares does not yet do is we will have Bancor liquidity style arrays. Not in the first release. In the later releases there will be Bancor liquidity arrays between EZIRA coin and all currencies on the chain to allow for asynchronous liquidity. So that means there's one buy and sell price, and that moves in response to market demand. We will also have a maker-taker fee schedule, where makers do not pay transaction fees for using the DEX, and makers pay a transaction fee based on a percentage of their order instead of a tiny fraction of a cent like they do currently on bitshares. So making an order and providing liquidity will be free, and taking that liquidity will have a little bit of a higher cost and contribute revenue to the ecosystem of EZIRA.
Okay, if you left me a minute to translate it.
Yep.
Antonio dijo que sí, que evidentemente es un servicio de exchange, que sí va a tener listados desde un inicio los getaway para tener Bitcoin y Steam, y lo que ellos van a mejorar y que van a traer, que no tiene bitshares actualmente, es que va a haber un sistema de cambio líquido para ambas transacciones, o sea que te va a permitir hacer el cambio inmediatamente de uno por uno, más o menos. Eso es en traducción y en pequeñito lo que respondió ahorita Harrison también. And that's it. Go ahead, Harrison, sorry.
Thank you for the translating there, Danville. Next up, we'll talk about the governance addresses on EZIRA. So I spoke a little bit about what governance addresses do, but we'll see some of the upcoming changes to the white paper. in that governance addresses will soon have their own section for the white paper, because they are a little bit underexplained, and they are an important part of what allows EZIRA to socially scale a censorship-resistant platform without having any centralized censorship. There will be self-censorship or selection of filtering systems, but there will not be any one individual or group that has the ability to censor the posts. You will delegate that responsibility to someone you choose, and that is the governance address, and they will earn a return for your memberships. They'll earn a return if you purchase posts, promoted posts rather. They'll earn a return only when you contribute network revenue, and they will not earn a return otherwise. So it is up to them to encourage you to remain on the platform, to encourage you to participate, and encourage you to purchase a membership. So it's in their interest for user retention to be strong. That's their job. It's the job of a governance address. So a governance address earns 15% of each of their subscribers' network revenue. So the referrer and registrar each earn 7.5% each for their efforts in expanding the chain, and governance addresses earn 15%, and the rest goes to the network as revenue. So that burns EZIRA coin and increases its demand and diminishes its supply. So a governance address is responsible for content filtering. So there are global content filters, which is the interface is going to filter posts that have hardline tags for things that might normally be removed by a multi-thousand person team at Facebook. That'll be open to the community to moderate, and when you follow a governance address, you will basically follow along with all of their tags for posts without those needing to have the full network voting support. So when it is fully supported by the equivalent of 10 accounts with 10 accounts worth of voting power, then all of the interfaces kick in to enact the tag policy. But if the governance address does it, then it will automatically do it straight away. So this requires a little bit of white paper reading, but essentially instead of the interface directly choosing which users to blacklist and filter if they post interesting or explicit content, then it will be up to the users to choose which governance address they want to follow, if they want to follow any, to improve the quality of their content experience. Governance addresses will also be able to curate mediators into a list of trusted and untrusted mediators, which only affects the interface. So it'll enable the governance address to mark fraudulent mediators as untrusted, and to mark trustworthy mediators as trusted, so that they can be more visible and seen at the top of the list. And this is all interface level only, so it is up to you to choose to turn this on or off. So this is a service that is provided by the governance address. Then there's also recommended votes. So for those for new people coming into the blockchain that hold EZIRA or EZIRA Power, they'll be displayed with a section that provides them with recommended votes, so that they can press one click to automatically vote for the recommended votes of their governance address. So that is optional. That is just for users who aren't familiar with politics on the chain, or whichever witnesses favorable. They can defer to the judgment of their governance address if they choose to do so. And lastly, they offer asset and business ratings. So this is an important part of establishing a web of trust on EZIRA, because it will be censorship resistant. There are likely, I'm saying it right now, there will be scammers, there will be scam assets, there will be scam businesses on EZIRA, and one of the roles of governance addresses is to provide a rating out of 10 for how trustworthy each business is, to make it easier for people to see which ones they should and should not consider doing business with. So this is again interface level only, and is not anyway going to be censoring anyone's transactions, and this can all be turned off at any time. So is it a service that is provided to try and guide novice users into safe businesses and away from scam businesses and scam assets as well. And users choose which governance address they follow, and if they don't like it, they can choose another one, or they can choose none at all. So that's the difference between eBay and the EZIRA marketplace. If someone at eBay headquarters thinks a business is a scam, they'll just delete it. They won't tell anyone. They won't ask permission. They'll just delete it, and then it's gone. On EZIRA, it'll be up to you to decide whether or not to put your credence in the recommendations of a governance address, but they will provide the service for you. And they will be earning a return from your usage of the network, and they will not earn a return if you do not contribute revenue to the network. So it is in their interest to retain you as a long-term high-value EZIRA customer. Moving on to the next topic here, we will have non-fungible assets. So for those of you familiar with Ethereum, this one is fairly straightforward. A non-fungible asset is an asset that is represented by a single token for a unique object or a unique asset, or any representation of information on the blockchain that only has one unit and it is unique. So they're different from other assets like user-issued assets because those assets are fungible, so one of them is equivalent to another one, whereas non-fungible assets are unique and not equivalent to one another, and they usually contain metadata that explains what they are and why they're important. So we'll be having non-fungible assets that will be tradable through the EZIRA marketplace, and they can contain all sorts of abstractions and data structures within them to represent anything that a developer's mind can come up with. Next topic is going to be something a little bit more focused on economics. It's very important that we come back to sound economics when we're devising crypto economic systems. So an important question that is needed to be asked is, what is sound money? So for those of you who are familiar with the concept of sound money, I'll go back to basics for just a few moments for our newer users. So sound money is an economic term to describe a type of money that has several properties. Number one, it has a limited supply, and number two, it is issued in a decentralized way. So it has no central issuer, and it has a limited supply. So the most commonly used form of sound money in the world is gold, because it has a fairly limited supply in that there's a finite amount of it on Earth, and it has no central issuer. So therefore, a piece of gold acts as sound money. Why that's important to economists is that it enables what's called Austrian economics to take place. So when you have a fixed supply monetary system, you have all sorts of benefits in that wealth can be stored properly, wealth is not inflated away, and money can be held for the long term, because there is no longer a giant incentive to spend to spend it straight away. In sound money, in fact, the value of money increases over time because it buys up a proportionately larger part of the economy. So it then changes the mindset of everyone in that economy to focus on saving and investment rather than spending before the value inflates away. So that is ultimately the concept behind Bitcoin, to be electronic sound money, to be something that is not inflationary, something that is deflationary, or increases in value over time because it has a fixed supply. And it's for that reason that EZIRA's assets are split into two. So there's EZIRA, which has a limited supply and acts as sound money because it can be traded between each other without worrying about it being inflated away. It has a limited supply of 10 million. Whereas EZIRA coin is a different type of asset that is rewarded for contribution to the network. So that is not sound money. that is a medium of exchange asset that is inflationary by design, and that inflation is used to pay for content posts, it's used to pay for witnesses, and it's used to reward the holders of EZIRA with some of the inflation of that asset. That inflation is counteracted by being bought and burned by the network services, so that's memberships, post promotions, trading fees, etc. So there is a downward pressure to the supply of EZIRA coin, and there is a continual issuance of 10 million per year, and where the market finds an equilibrium will be different over time. So its supply is not fixed and its issuance is ongoing. So it is not sound money. What this does is it enables people who want to store wealth or store value to hold EZIRA, which is not inflated, and those who want to post content and be rewarded to earn EZIRA coin, and they are then incentivized to spend it. So EZIRA coin is the spending cryptocurrency. Because it's inflationary, you want to spend it before its value drops, which drives the velocity of money on EZIRA, so that essentially the velocity of money controls part of the value of that money, because the more frequently it's spent on products and services, the more value it ends up holding. So that's why EZIRA combines both models into one blockchain, whereas Steam itself does not have a sound money alternative inbuilt into its blockchain. It only has Steam, which is inflated away at, I believe the number is about 7 or 8% per year. EZIRA coin will have a much higher inflation rate, but EZIRA will have no inflation at all. It'll be a fixed supply from the start. So that brings me to the next topic, and that's miner issued assets. So on EZIRA, users will be able to create user issued assets which give them a fixed supply asset to distribute as they see fit, or to sell to represent any arbitrary economic object or asset. However, what that doesn't provide is sound money. So user issued assets are not sound money because they are issued by a single entity. They're issued by a single entity. What they don't do is they don't limit the amount that can be produced, because when you create a user issued asset you can usually produce more, up to a certain limit. And their distribution is not decentralized in the same way as Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or Ethereum might be. So to give EZIRA users the ability to make an asset that can act as sound money, which has a limited supply and is issued in a decentralized way to miners, we will be having miner issued assets. And this is an allegory to user issued assets, except instead of issuing the asset to one specific user up front, what it does is it issues the units of that asset to all of the miners on the EZIRA chain simultaneously. So every time an EZIRA miner mines a block, they may get their EZIRA coin reward first and foremost, and they may also get many tens or hundreds of miner issued assets which they can then sell to the chain. So it provides a reward for the economic expenditure of energy to secure the chain, without distributing the asset to one single party, and without having any sort of voting at play in how it's distributed. So it allows for a community to have its own sound money, and it enables people to make a currency that has similar economic properties to Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash, without needing to organize all of their own mining, and without having a central party responsible for issuing it. And by inheriting the properties, the security properties of the EZIRA coin asset, in that it has no transaction fees, and that the rate at which it can be spent is rate limited by the holding of EZIRA power. So essentially it allows for an arbitrary number of community-based sound money assets to be created, without having to compete for mining power, because they will all share mining power and share the delegated proof-of-stake consensus model, while still issuing the asset to the miners of the chain. Now, some of you might be wondering why I'm talking about sound money and miner issued assets. And the real reason behind this is because the primary reason why cryptocurrency is so important is that it undermines international reserve banking. So for those of you who live in the US or any country on earth for that matter, you at some level have a privately owned federal or national reserve bank. And what that is a private company that is assigned a monopoly charter by your government to produce fiat currency for that government to spend by borrowing it into existence. So every time your government needs to spend money to pay for salaries or to pay for public expenses, what they do first is they create a bond which they then sell to the reserve bank for money which it prints of its own accord, and that bond pays interest. So whenever the government borrows money by selling a bond, it therefore owes more money than actually exists. So think about that for a second. What that means is that government debts can actually never ever be paid back, because there is simply more money owed than exists in the entire economy. They charge interest on the asset that they lend out. So who that is every major reserve bank across this planet. They have monopoly charters over the production of currency in a country. That's essentially what a country is. It's the borders in which a reserve bank operates. Governments are a bit more flexible, but the borders define where the money starts and ends. That's fundamentally the purpose of borders. It's to denominate which reserve bank you are a tax asset to. You're a tax asset that is written against the debt of your government. Each and every one of us. So the question is why? Why does this happen? The reason why it happens is so that the government, or any government, can continue to borrow and borrow and borrow and use the tax revenue of each generation to prop up the debt of the one before it. So bonds are never really paid back. They're just paid back out of issuing more bonds. Fiat currency is the biggest Ponzi scheme that we have all been a part of our entire lives. And it's important to realize that that's the real reason why we're escaping fiat currency, because it is a system that is not sustainable and it is doomed to failure. Every great empire that has come before us has collapsed when this system of money has been introduced. It undergoes a massive period of growth when money is inflated by a central agency or a central bank or a central government. And then when people lose faith in that money and realize that it is piles and piles of debt against their own taxes, then they abandon that currency and the organizing institution collapses. That happened with the Roman Empire. It's happened with many institutions throughout history. What we have now is the technology to end the cycle, or called the business cycle, of contraction and expansion of credit, which basically means tightening or loosening the rules on which people can borrow new money to keep the fiat economy surviving for another year in the delusion that it's going to eventually work out. So how this all works is through government force only. It can only happen through force. This doesn't work in a voluntary system. It requires government force to force everybody to use a currency for taxes that provides value to that currency in that you need to pay taxes with it. That is the how. They assign a bank with the exclusive monopoly to print currency in a country to, exactly right, just hold all the wealth and make us slaves. It's not just holding all the wealth, it is the keys to printing unlimited wealth. And what that means is actually stealing the value that other people hold in that currency. So by making people captive to a currency, they can effectively automate and systematize mass intergenerational and international theft. That is what we're talking here. Intergenerational and international theft on a scale that has never been seen before in this civilization's history. How that is happening is because people don't know about it. People don't understand it, and that's for a good reason. Because, as there is a famous quote, if people understood their banking system, there would be a revolution on the streets tomorrow morning. It's up to us to be that revolution and to have the solution ready when this all turns the way it inevitably has to go. This can't continue. This cannot continue indefinitely, because people won't believe in it anymore. And now that there's a cryptocurrency escape hatch, what that means is that debt jubilees are more likely to happen than ever, because now people can, instead of just having their entire fortunes vanish in a debt jubilee, which is essentially when everybody realizes that debt is worthless and the currency becomes worthless and you switch to a new currency. It's important to realize that all cryptocurrency has to do to beat fiat currency is just survive. If cryptocurrency can survive for 50 years, it's already doing better than most fiat currencies. The average life expectancy of a fiat currency is less than 30 years. That's how long it takes for a fiat currency to hyperinflate and die on average. The US dollar is the one exception, because they have an international military to support it, and they have massive regulatory barriers in place to artificially prop up its value, because oil can only be transferred using US dollars. China is trying to go around that, Russia is trying to go around that, Iran is trying to go around that. Eventually they'll find a way, and that way will be cryptocurrency. The US dollar is backed by guns and oil. It's that simple. Cryptocurrency is backed by immutable mathematics and human consensus through programming languages. One of them can survive, one of them cannot indefinitely. And on to the last point, all of this enables centrally planned interest rates. So what is a centrally planned interest rate? That's when the members of your Federal Reserve get together and decide amongst themselves to pull a number out of their behinds to charge interest on the money that they themselves print. So that is essentially the percentage of wealth that company decides to steal from the entire economy by inflating it away. When you hear inflation, what they're actually saying is theft by the central bank. They print money to extract value from everybody who already holds that money. When you have a centrally planned interest rate, what that allows is for them to make the interest rate artificially low. And what that does is that low interest rate enables people to borrow at a great excess on what the economy is actually able to have capacity for. Interest rates in a free market are effectively equal to the preferential time ratio. So how much someone is willing to forego today to gain tomorrow. What that does is it lowers the market price for time, and it makes time artificially cheap. It makes taking from tomorrow at the expense of today, consuming today at the expense of tomorrow rather, artificially cheap. It enables for artificially low prices for instant gratification. It enables people to borrow and spend today without paying the full price of what that causes in lost potential growth, because it is abstracted away by a low interest rate. In the free market, in the market that EZIRA aims to enable, interest rates will be freely floating, so people will be able to borrow at the interest rate of their own choice, and it will not be chosen by a central board. People will be able to borrow funds on the EZIRA DEX at the interest rate that the market is willing to lend it at, not what the rate a central bank is willing to print it at. Now with that said, we'll move on to some questions about anything that we've discussed here, or any points of contention with what I've just talked about here. So does anyone have any questions or anything they want to bring up? Thank you, Iron Monkey. First crypto, then free energy, Nikola Tesla style. It's really interesting how things get shoveled under the rug when they're not quite profitable. A lot of that is caused by patent legislation. A lot of that's caused by copyright legislation, and unfortunately for the people who believe in state force to protect the idea of intellectual property, or the idea that you can force the government to make someone else stop something because you have a piece of paper that says you did it first and you happen to have a lot of lawyers to pay. The idea that things will be shoveled under the rug by patents and copyrights is something that I think will be massively reduced with the onset of open source software. Open source technology is inherently going to develop much faster than closed source technology, by design. Now with that said, I think we'll move on to the next part if no one has any more questions. So next up this week is the EZIRA crowdfunding and auction guide. So every week for the past 14 or 15 weeks, EZIRA has been having a weekly auction of 10,000 EZIRA, which is distributed between bidders to the EZIRA address each week. And the auction closes 1 hour after each EZIRA Hangout. EZIRA is then distributed to bidders a few hours after closing. Over 700 bitUSD have been contributed this week already. Take advantage of the last few opportunities to get EZIRA before the preliminary ICO closes on September the 1st. So you can purchase EZIRA below its current market price. The current buy order is sitting at around 14 cents bitUSD. So like some people speculated in here before, if the price is in fact below 14 bitUSD, that can be sold for an instantaneous flip profit. That is not what this is about. This is about people making an investment in EZIRA, but the market price does need to reflect the auction price. So if that arbitrage sounds interesting to you, then you can send a bitshares bid to EZIRA. That's EZIRA of bitshares or bitUSD, or for that matter any other DEX supported assets that are liquid to bitshares. Spoiler alert, that's all of them. You can alternatively send Bitcoin to the address starting with 3Q1N on the YouTube screen now, or to the address starting with 0x2CAD on the YouTube screen now, and I will just copy those into the Discord for you guys now. So those are in the Telegram channel, and we will just get those here in the Discord. So it is important that if you do choose to send Bitcoin or Ethereum directly to those addresses there in the Hangout chat, that you immediately reply either in Telegram or in Discord or in a direct message to myself with your BitShares address and transaction ID. Otherwise you will not be able to receive your EZIRA because I will not know where it is coming from. So for those of you who would like to make a bid to the EZIRA auction this week, it is the second last auction. Unfortunately, this deal cannot last forever. The preliminary ICO must end and give way to the testnet and main ICO. The show must go on. This train stops for no one. There are 2 weeks left, and if you would like to get on board, then you can send your bitshares or bitUSD to EZIRA. That's EZIRA. And moving forward for this week, we will be having the crowdfunding guide. So I'll just show you where you can trade EZIRA on bitshares. And that is on the bitshares DEX here, which you can get to at exchange.ezira.io. So if you don't have a bitshares account, then you can go to ezira.io and click the first link that you see on the homepage. Takes you straight here. So as you can see on the EZIRA asset, there are a few sell orders extending from 75 cents down to 24.8 cents, and a few buy orders starting from 14 cents all the way right down to not too much at all. So to make a bid to the EZIRA auction, all you need to do is get your bitshares account and deposit either Bitcoin or Ethereum or bitshares to that account if you haven't already, and then you can send to the address EZIRA the quantity of bitshares that you like. For example, 10,000 bitshares, that'll get you a lot of EZIRA. And then you would send that transaction and then input your password accordingly. Alternatively, if the price suits you, then you can also get EZIRA on the bitshares trading pair, currently selling for 1.99 bitshares. Or alternatively, you can get it directly for Ethereum or Bitcoin or Steam, which is on those trading pairs there. However, the prices on Ethereum, Bitcoin and Steam are not quite in line with the others. Those markets are a little bit illiquid, so I would recommend picking up your EZIRA on either the bitUSD or bitshares pairs, where there is a little bit of a supply available below the market price or the official price of 75 cents. So with that said, you can make a direct purchase by putting bitUSD into your bitshares account and purchasing slightly above the minimum price. For example, if I was to buy 10 EZIRA at 30 cents bitUSD, I would put in this following order and then execute that accordingly. So you just put in the price that you'd like to buy it at. Alternatively, if you don't want to make an auction bid, another way to get EZIRA at a good price is to put in a limit buy order. We've had some people getting some reasonably cheap EZIRA by putting in a limit buy order and then allowing people to sell into that. So you can be the supporting structure of the EZIRA price by creating a buy order, and that will fill over the course of the next couple of days. And there is some significant potential to get a good deal there. So, with that said, we'll move along with the competition. So, last week we had a Twitter competition where we asked, what will you buy with your EZIRA content rewards? And there were quite a few responses there, so what we'll do is have a quick look at some of those responses in the competitions Discord. And then we will move along with the associated tweets. So remember to include the @EZIRA network tag, and then you will show up in the EZIRA project's mentions. And we have Jesus Antonio with the jumping the gun here. He's already on to this week's competition, so we'll talk about that one in a moment. But we have some entries from I Am Prosper Steel. He's going to buy himself a laptop with his EZIRA content rewards. And we have Wizzy, who's going to buy himself some books and a new phone. Fantastic. And some entries from Sam, who's going to obtain some tools. A bit vague there. Xavier Nino with a new camera. That's a great idea. Get some really cool pictures on there. And we have Serby with some gifts for her bestie and her mum. That's the nicest one I've seen yet. And Quadjo with the first purchase of a faster laptop. I'm sure laptops will be a very popular item on the EZIRA decks. On the EZIRA marketplace rather, not the decks. Okay, and we have some big entries here from Jesus Antonio with some books and a new phone for Jesus. And Mariana with a massive 228 retweets and 277 likes. With my rewards from EZIRA, I hope to buy technology equipment to continue creating content for the platform. Fantastic answer there, with well over 500 engagements. And we have a few more entries here with 3 retweets. And then we're going back into last week's competition. So I think our winner is looking like Mariana Arevalo. Can't see a whole lot coming to... Oh, hang on a second. Xavier Nino. Okay, I'm going to have to count these. That's 545 for Xavier Nino. Versus... 505 for Mariana. Looks like we have a new leader with 545 is Xavier Nino, and I can't see a whole lot above that one. So we'll check if Xavier Nino is in the Discord for competitions. Oh, hang on a second. Oh, there he is, Xavier Nino, with the bitshares address Marif88. Revi 17, he is here in the Discord with us today. Looks like Xavier Nino is our winner for this week with a massive 545 engagements, likes and retweets. Second place, solid effort to Mariana with 505, if I recall correctly. Yep. Okay, so winner is Xavier Nino. With Marif88. Congratulations, Xavier. So Xavier wins 300 plus 5% of his EZIRA balance. Let's see if someone has a lot of EZIRA. What have we got here? We have 20 EZIRA. That's something. That is something indeed. Okay. So 5% of 20, that's just one extra bonus EZIRA. So, winner of 301 EZIRA is Xavier Nino with the bitshares address Marif88 for his tweet this week. That's 301. Winner of the EZIRA Twitter competition. Congratulations. 301 EZIRA to Xavier Nino. Okay, so this week's competition, the new competition that is starting right now, is post a tweet answering the question, what asset will you create on EZIRA and why, in one sentence. Include the tags hashtag EZIRA and at EZIRA Network, and include a link to the EZIRA Telegram and Discord. Link your post in the competition's Discord with your bitshares address to enter. The tweet with the most likes and retweets on Twitter will win 200 EZIRA plus 5% of their total EZIRA holdings. The winner will be announced in next week's Hangout, and if the winner is present, they will win a bonus 100 EZIRA, and we've been on an incredible streak with everyone being present the last few weeks. It's been fantastic. And the first valid entry, which may have already been made, will win 10 bonus EZIRA and be linked in the EZIRA Hangout thread, which is currently doing quite nicely on Steam trending. So, what asset will you create on EZIRA and why? On Twitter in one sentence with the relevant tags and posting it into the competition's Discord. So I'll just post the slide one more time in here. So that's the EZIRA competition slide there. And we're back from that little technical difficulty there. The EZIRA show continues. Finishing up for the last part of this week's EZIRA Hangout is going to be the general discussion. So does anyone have any questions or answers that you want to discuss about the EZIRA project or anything in general? And for those things you want to take out of the Hangout, you can always email me at harrison@ezira.io for any other queries, team role applications, proposals, or business matters. And you can join the EZIRA Telegram channel at www.t.me/EZIRA Network. So to finish up, does anyone have any questions or topics that they want to talk about that haven't been addressed this week? Seeing a few typing answers here. Okay, so if no one has any questions, we will wrap up this week's EZIRA Hangout. Thank you to everyone for coming. Thank you to everyone who is watching this on YouTube at the moment. And remember, if you liked this EZIRA Hangout, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the EZIRA YouTube channel, where you can get all of the latest EZIRA project updates delivered to your subscription feed every week. Thank you everyone for your amazing questions and your very interesting topics this week. Thank you especially to our Diamond EZIRANs. You know who you are. Dow Street, Meta, bitshares 2010, Buy My Pump 0, and many, many more. You can check out all of the Diamond EZIRANs at ezira.io/investment. There is a list of them there, and if you would like to get your name on the list as the founding crew and the founding body, the body of investment behind EZIRA is growing stronger every day, and you can get your name on that list by holding 10,000 EZIRA. And if you would like to make a bid to the EZIRA auction, remember that that is EZIRA on BitShares. Either BitShares, bitUSD, or any other exchangeable currency there is accepted as a bid. We'll be closing the weekly auction 1 hour after the hangout, so get your bids in as soon as you can. And if you manage to get a nice big bag of EZIRA this week, congratulations. With that said, we will close up this week's EZIRA Hangout. My name is Harrison McLean. Thank you to everyone for coming. And remember, together we will build the next world. Thank you and good night.